All right, this video is exactly what the title says. There's no hidden guide or any cost or any fee or anything like that. This is simply a guide on how to sell your home solo. Obviously, I'm a realtor licensed in the province of New Brunswick. I, of course, have to recommend that you hire a realtor to sell your home. However, if you are unable to or choose not to, this video is for you. I broke this video down into a few key categories: safety, legal, pricing, presentation and staging, marketing and photography, and then how do you handle showings, offers, open houses. All right, throughout this video, I am going to be looking at my computer here and there simply because there's a lot and I want to make sure I cover everything in this video. So I apologize in advance if this is distracting when I look over to make sure I'm just including everything, but it will be happening and I just don't have the time to edit this out. So let's start with safety, the most important part really of anything in life, but especially with selling your home. This is important no matter who you are, but it is especially important if you are a woman trying to do this. So step number one, have someone on standby ready to go in case something goes wrong. This could be a friend, a family member, someone at your local group, or it could even be a neighbor. Just make sure you have somebody on standby that knows what you're doing, knows where you are, knows who is going to your house and when they're supposed to be there. Next up, have code words with this person as well as other people in your family and friend group. So these code words shouldn't be super obvious. For the longest time, you'll hear things like get the red folder or get the blue folder. That is a little bit too obvious, especially for using color coordinated things like orange being unsure and red being call the cops. That can usually tip off a savvy criminal. So I recommend doing something a little bit more modern and a little bit less obvious. This can be stuff like, can you open up my computer and send me the email from the lawyer or from the doctor or from the accountant? Whatever it is, just make sure it's something that you know what it is and somebody else that you're talking to knows what it is. And most importantly, you just want to make sure you have something that if you're in absolute uncertainty and you feel like you're in danger, you can say this one thing and the other person will know what to do. And it's best to practice rehearsing this in the mirror because you don't want to sound scared and paranoid while you're making this call. You want to sound calm, cool, and collected. Prior to showings, make sure all your valuables are hidden. This is, of course, quite obvious, but sometimes people overlook what might be considered a valuable. These can be things like tools in the garage. They can be certain electronics, toys. TVs, obviously, you can't move those, but I definitely recommend hiding gaming consoles and computers that might be expensive. If you're not sure if they're expensive, ask whoever owns it in the house. If your kid has a fancy PC, I definitely recommend that you ask him, is this a PC that someone might want to steal? If so, hide it in the photos and hide it in the showings. Next up, always park your car on the street prior to the showing. Do not let them see you get in your car and then park it on the street. Make sure it's already on the street for the showing and make sure that it's parked in a way that you can actually get to that vehicle, get in and drive away if you need to. Just don't park in a way that will allow you to get blocked in, whether it be someone pulling in behind you or someone pulling in front of you. Next up, this kind of goes hand in hand with the first point, but make sure that the neighbors know what is going on. As long as one or two neighbors know what's happening, they'll know what to expect if something goes wrong. Make sure that anyone viewing the house without another realtor has a valid pre-approval letter from a real bank, and then make sure that you get photo ID so you can actually validate that that person is who they say they are. There's no perfect way to go about this, but it's certainly better than doing nothing. Next up, make sure you know exactly how many people are going to be going to the showing. You don't want to expect one person and then have their whole family show up for the showing. This is obviously very awkward, but it can also be a very significant safety risk. Invest in a doorbell camera or just really any security camera. For the cost, it is just worth it, especially if you're going to be selling your home. Make sure your kids and your pets are out of the house for the showing. I know this can be very difficult, especially if you have cats or dogs or something like that, but there's a very key reason that you want them out of the house, and it's not because they might be annoying to the person showing the house. It's because if you need to get out of that house, you don't want to have to leave anything behind. And this brings me up to my next point. If you feel you need to leave the house right away. If you opt to go with a virtual tour, whether that be an iGuide, Matterport, something like that, make sure that you don't just post that for anyone to see on the internet. Now, obviously, this is common where you'll see this on the various apps, realtor.ca, etc., and you can just click the link. I personally do not do these virtual tours because I do not want to put a blueprint out for everyone to look at the house I'm trying to sell. Yeah, it can maybe help sell the house. I think that's a little bit debatable, but it's definitely something that potential thieves and criminals are going to look at. And ultimately, you just don't want to give someone a map to the house unless you know they are very serious about that house. So if you do opt to go with these virtual tours, only send them to people that are qualified and show that they are approved for the house. Now, key boxes are complicated with for sale by owners. These can work no problem, but you just want to make sure that the key box you use is safe and you're not recycling that same key box time and time again. And you definitely don't want to use a door code that does not get reset every day. Make sure whatever key box you use is not going to have the same code when you go to bed at night. Now, if cats are kept in the home, which again, I really highly recommend that you don't keep any animals, kids, or anything like that in the house. You don't want anything in the house that you wouldn't want in the house if it caught on fire. Now, in the event that you can't move the cats out, I recommend you keep them in a dedicated room. Make sure that room is very clearly closed so that if someone goes in, they don't accidentally release the cats into the outside. And if they do release them, it's just into your living room. Just be careful. Make sure all the animals are accounted for in one room if you have to. Next up, legal. So, pretty much everything I say in this category is going to involve you consulting a qualified local attorney to ensure that everything is done properly. Make sure that the purchase and sale agreement is done beforehand by your attorney so that you know exactly what it looks like. Now, if it's a standardized contract, like here in New Brunswick, we have the standardized realtor purchase and sale agreements. Those are usually pretty fine. I don't see any issues with them. You just want to make sure you understand what it is you're signing. Next up, deposits. So, deposits, at least in New Brunswick, work a very specific way. This is going to vary depending where you are, and the details of these deposits is just going to vary a lot. So, you want to make sure that you know exactly what you're getting into. In New Brunswick, the deposit is only non refundable once the deal is firm. So, if I put a $5,000 deposit on a house and I fail on financing or inspection, you don't get to keep that $5,000. That's a common misconception, and it's something you definitely want to know beforehand. The reason behind the deposit is basically to give you security between the date the house goes firm and the date the house closes. I usually recommend that the deposit you get is at least 1% of the purchase price and ideally at least enough to cover the deposit on the next house you're buying if you're buying that one. Now, the trust accounts vary. Generally, they're held by an attorney and then they're released to the purchaser on closing. So, definitely just make sure you understand how that works and make sure that the funds are going to the proper person. Now, it's likely that you're going to come across another realtor when you sell your home. And yes, for sale by owners, most of them are sold by other realtors. It's just how it is. Now, ideally, sure, you avoid it and you save some money, but in the event that you don't, you're probably going to encounter something known as a seller's fee agreement. There are two ways that an agent can collect remuneration in the province of New Brunswick, either through a buyer agency agreement, where the buyer pays any commissions that are not paid by the seller in that agreement, or the seller's fee agreement, or both. The seller's fee agreement is exactly what it sounds like. It's how much you agree to pay that agent to show and sell your house. Sometimes they'll want you to sign this before they bring their buyers in. Here in New Brunswick, that's definitely a normal process and not something I would recommend balking at. However, if you feel that that fee is too high, talk to that realtor and negotiate with them. I'm not really allowed to talk about the details of how much remuneration or anything like that. That'll be between you, the other realtor, and whatever works best for your goals. Next up for legal, chattels and fixtures. So these are very important things. A chattel is basically if you took the house upside down and shook it, anything that would fall out would be a chattel. Anything that would remain in place would be a fixture. So a fixture would be something like a dishwasher, um, not a fridge, not a stove, but a dishwasher, a microwave if it's built in. Anything that's basically built in. A central vacuum is a good example. HRV, anything like that. Anything that's basically fixed into it that's part of the home's mechanical system is a fixture. A chattel can even be something like a baby barn or a shed. So if you want that chattel to be out of your property and come with the deal, make sure that it is stipulated in the purchase and sale agreement under chattels or fixtures. And if you need to keep it, make sure it's not in the purchase and sale agreement. And last thing for legal, the property disclosure statement. The only thing I'm going to say about this is talk to your attorney about that before you do it. That's all I'm going to say about that. Next up, the most important part, of course, of selling your home is pricing. You want to make sure it's priced appropriately, not too high, not too low, and certainly not at a weird amount that might make people laugh at it. If a home is priced too high, it just simply won't sell, or if it will sell, it's going to take so long that you wish you had sold it for less. However, if you price a home too low, you're going to leave money on the table, especially if you're for sale by owner and you don't have access to MLS. You just want to make sure that you're priced at that perfect amount or close to it as possible. Now, how do you determine what your house is actually worth? Well, there's really two good ways to do this. Number one would be hiring a professional appraiser and having an appraisal done on your house. This is definitely the best way. Definitely consider an appraisal. However, if that's not an option, you can actually have a realtor send you sales data for your property to make sure that you're priced appropriately. This will show you generally the photos and the condition of the house, as well as the square footage and details. Next up, pre-inspection. So pre-inspecting your house is one of those things you do to prepare yourself for anything that might come up during a negotiation. Some people choose to leave the inspections on the table for the other buyers to see. Some people keep it in their back pocket just in case. The main point of this is just to make sure if your home needs something, you want to know what it needs before you come into an agreement of purchase and sale. Generally, buyers should do this too, but it's also a good idea for a seller to do it as well. Now, pricing philosophy. There are basically four ways you can do it. You can do the weird price method. So, 3, 30, 4, 6. I don't recommend this. This is like a really dated practice that they used to do a lot in the 80s and 90s. It doesn't really work that well today. The idea behind it was that, oh, well, buyers are going to remember it because it's priced weird. But that's not really how it works. And there's no data that shows that's how people are going to remember it. The other two strategies are either, or the other three strategies are pricing it at a flat amount. So like 325, 350, 400, or going something like 399 or 499 or 224.9. And of course, the Walmart strategy of 88. So 400K, list at 388. Whatever works best for you is going to be up to you, but I definitely recommend looking at your local market because sometimes if you price it at that 399 mark, it might rule out people that are looking between say 4 and 500. In the past, it used to be that you wanted to be at 299 because it looks better, but in this day and age, most people are looking at pretty flat price amounts. So you want to make sure that you're priced in a way where it's going to show up in the appropriate search criteria. Okay, presentation and staging. This one is a little bit complicated, and this is one where I'm going to be looking at my computer quite a bit. So, generally speaking, people do not need a magazine quality home when they're looking to buy a home. They just want a clean, good home that shows that it was well maintained and looked after. And you can do this on the cheap. First up, hide the dog crates, hide anything that might smell bad. Make sure that, any reptile enclosures are clean. Make sure the cat litter is cleaned and put in a place where it's not obvious. Smelling cat litter in the kitchen is going to turn away so many buyers, and you want to make sure you're not nose blind to these things. If you're not sure if something's going to be really, really difficult to be around, find your most honest friend, invite them over, and ask them to smell your house and let you know if anything in it smells bad. Now, if you can afford to, having your home professionally cleaned is definitely a great option. You're going to get really good quality cleaning if you do this. However, if you can't afford that or you choose not to do it, make sure that things are clean that might not be obvious. Things like baseboards, countertops, backsplashes, sinks, faucets, bathtubs, toilets, etc., walls. You don't want the home to be unclean because that is going to turn away probably some of your best buyers. You want a home that shows well and looks clean. This one's definitely voluntary, but I definitely think it's a good sign when I see a seller that has a binder for the home. So past inspections, past assessments, any repairs, invoices, receipts, anything like that, put in one space and left on a counter or a workbench or something like that. It shows that the seller is organized and knows exactly what has gone on in their house. If you have that, great. If you don't have that, I definitely recommend digging up receipts and making one. Now, there are two ways to do staging. There is, of course, the full blown staging where you take a vacant house and you put in furniture, drapes, carpets, all of that stuff in. That can cost easily 2% or more of the purchase price of the house, usually add about 0.25% for each room that you have to stage. However, this is not what most staging is. Most staging is what I call light staging. So this would be something like a little home sense trip. If you have a beat up couch, put a throw blanket on it, make sure there's some nice pillows, replace your drapes if your cats have been destroying them. Anything that really will make your house look like what you would want to see if it was on HGTV or if you were inviting someone important over. And curb appeal. Curb appeal is actually pretty simple. There are cheap ways to make it work, and there are slightly more expensive ways, but definitely cost effective, high value options that I would recommend if you can afford it. So, starting with the cheap stuff, make sure that your lawn is weeded. Make sure that if you have a paved walkway, that there are no weeds sticking out. You don't want it to look like a scene from an apocalyptic movie. Slightly more expensive options would be flower boxes in the windows, of course, sealing your driveway, power washing your house, staining your deck, or even replacing the deck boards on an older deck. That'll definitely make it look way better and will help you sell it. Outside lighting is also a pretty good way to get some extra curb appeal. If you have those old white builder grade lights from like the 90s and the 80s, definitely consider replacing those with something a little bit more modern that might just make your home pop out a little bit more. This could cost you as little as, 300-400 bucks, and it will make a huge difference. Last part of the presentation section of this video, make sure your HRV stuff is serviced, cleaned, and make sure you have the receipts for that. So if your mini splits are gross, make sure they're not gross. Hire a professional cleaner to clean the inside and the outside unit. Make sure it looks nice. Make sure that if the inspector looks at it, there's not going to be mold or any black staining on it. All right, now up to marketing. So I'm going to go over photos, I'm going to go over marketing and all that sort of thing. So if you hire a professional photographer, that is the best way to do it. However, if you're not sure how or who to hire, make sure you know what a good photo looks like. In real estate, you want straight lines. You want to make sure everything is covered in that photo. So you want to make sure that there's not stuff that's, a toilet seat left up, or an empty toilet paper roll on the sink, or a gross dishcloth that's just been left on top of the stove, or dirty stove. You want to make sure that your photographer has the eye to look for these things to make sure the home looks good in the photos. Next up, you're going to want to have a good quality lens for that photographer. Doesn't matter how good you are of a photographer. If you're trying to take photos with a 50 millimeter lens inside, it's not going to look good. It's just not. So if you do find one and you're not sure if they're good, look at their setup, look at their past portfolio, and make sure everything works out well. You don't want crooked, you don't want bad color grading. You want something that looks like you would see on realtor.ca. Now, if you're in an area where you can't find a photographer, there's actually ways you can go about this. So if you have the money, you can buy a Canon M100 or an M50. This is actually what I used for a little bit, and you can get the ultra wide. I think it's 10 to 22 millimeter lens. That is perfect for real estate stuff on the inside. I recommend long exposures if you can, just to make sure that everything is crisp. I use f8 for aperture, or f12, something, or f11, something along those lines. You basically want a high enough aperture where everything's in focus, and you want to expose it long enough so it's not too dark. You'll need a tripod for this. However, if you're taking photos and you're stuck to an iPhone, you can actually still make it work. The way to do it is to make sure you understand the fundamentals of a good photo. If you have a newer iPhone where you can go up to 0.5, that is actually perfect. And you can even make sure that the lines are straight, and you'd be surprised how good that photo is going to look, even with an iPhone. You can actually get Lightroom, which I recommend for editing the photo, but there is also free software. I just use Lightroom because I've been using it for the last few years. Next up, Facebook. So I recommend creating a Facebook page for your home, specifically titled the address. Make sure all the photos and the media and everything about that is there. And then you're going to want to do paid ads for this house. Trust me, it just works. And when you do it, do the desktop setting. Make sure that you're targeting people to click on the link. And if you can, get a website for that. However, if you don't have a website for that, make sure that they are directed to not call your phone. You don't want that. You do not want people calling your phone through Facebook. You want messages through Facebook. It's going to be annoying, but it's better than nothing. The last part of marketing is having a good sign. Don't stick that cheap orange and black sign out front. It's going to make you look cheap, which is going to make buyers think, what else have they cheaped out on this house? Invest in a quality sign. There are a lot of talented tradespeople and carpenters that can make you a quality sign. There are graphic design companies. There are local printing shops. There are all kinds of ways to support your local economy and have a nice sign that stands out. Ideally, you want it to look just like one of the real estate signs, but just don't do the cheap orange and black sign. It's not going to help sell your house. It's going to make people think you're not serious about selling it. And generally speaking, the houses I see that are for sale by owner that look the best actually have custom signs. Now the last part of this video. So this is negotiating, showing open houses, and dealing with offers and agents and how to do all that. So I have a little bit of experience with this topic, and I'm just going to give you the blunt facts straight up. Firstly, negotiating. Negotiating is not some mystical, complicated skill that only agents have. You probably have it too. Most people are able to negotiate. If they aren't, they just don't know the details, the facts, and the statistics to be able to handle that negotiation. But they can do it, and so can you. To negotiate, you're going to want to know 5 key real estate statistics. You're going to want to know the market temperature. This will help you determine what type of market you're in. So sale to new listing ratio and months of inventory, also known as SNLR and MOI. If the MOI is, say, 4 or 5 months, it means the market's a little bit slower. However, I like to use the SNLR as a definitive guide to know what type of market I'm in. An SNLR under 40% means that you're in a buyer's market. Over 60%, you're in a seller's market, and anything in between, you're in a balanced market. This will help you price accordingly. Next up would be the median price. So the median price is exactly what it sounds like. I'm not going to explain that too much, but it is better than average price. So make sure you use the median and not the average, and make sure it's relevant to your home, not just all homes. Of course, you're going to want to make sure that your CDOM, so that is the cumulative days on market, is appropriate. So this is different than just regular days on market. However, any days on market stat is going to help you a lot because it's going to let you know roughly how well priced you are. If you are sitting for a full month above the average CDOM or the median CDOM, it means that you're probably priced a little bit too high and you should adjust. However, If it's only been a week and the CDOM median is like 3 weeks, don't panic if you haven't sold because you might still sell. And the last one is the SLPR. That is the sale to list price ratio. It's exactly what it sounds like. So if you have a home for $100,000 and it sells for $98,000, your SLPR is 98%. Make sure that you consider this percentage when you're handling offers. It might throw you off if you get an offer that feels low, but make sure that the SLPR is appropriate. Are they actually coming in low, or is it 20K under asking, but they're actually at 95% of asking? You can really bring people up from anything. So don't be deterred by a low offer. Just make sure you counter based off percentages. So if they come in at 90% and you feel it's low, counter at 99%. Don't let a deal die just because you're upset about that offer. Next up, detach yourself emotionally from your home. Forget all of the memories in that home until that home is sold. You can get emotional and all that stuff once it's sold, but don't let those emotions get in the way of the deal, because if there's a single thing that agents are there for, it is to be a mediator in between you and your emotions for the sale of that house. It's blunt, but it's true, and we're the same with our own houses too. Okay, how to deal with agents. Undoubtedly, you're going to get called by agents. Some of them will have buyers, some of them won't have buyers, some of them will want to simply get you to list, and some of them will say they have buyers and then not have buyers. So, how do you identify this? Make sure that they don't have a phantom buyer. So, is the buyer going to be with them during the showing? If so, great. If not, I would be a little bit skeptical because generally speaking, FaceTime showings like that are not great. And I definitely don't recommend them, at least not since the market has cooled down substantially. This might be different depending where you are, so make sure it is normal for your